Sam Leavitt was great in 2024 with plenty to improve on in 2025, and it starts with making more friends in the passing game.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the show. Sam Leavitt, he's got a lot to improve on this year. We got to talk about making new friends in the passing game. I want to talk about the efficiency that he had, which was pretty good, but there's stuff to work on before we round out the show with the most important thing, that's winning in clutch time. Let's talk about making some friends in the passing game. We know it's no secret that Sam Leavitt and Jordyn Tyson have a very special connection. Right around 10 targets per game were handed out to Jordyn Tyson last year. He turned that into 75 receptions, 1,101 yards, 14.7 yards per reception, and 10 touchdowns. Those two were in sync. Now, keep in mind, they missed playing with each other for 3 games this year. One of those games, you had Sam Leavitt out due to injury. So, what's his name? Jeff Sims was in to replace him. In that game, you had, against Cincinnati, Jordyn Tyson, goodness gracious, caught 6 passes for 108 yards. Still pretty big. Then Jordyn Tyson was out for the year after the Arizona game. The next 2 games against Iowa State and Texas in the Big 12 Championship and the Peach Bowl, respectively, Jordyn Tyson was not out there. So, essentially, you could have really had an even bigger year than what he was. Now, I don't know how much bigger the numbers would have been against Cincinnati had Leavitt been out there. I think it would have been more than 6 receptions, but as far as the efficiency goes, I think it's probably a little bit worse, but he might find the end zone. In the playoff game and in the Big 12 Championship, I do think at that point in time, Tyson was just 100 yards per game kind of player. He probably would have gone off in those. But if you look at the rest of the numbers, I mean, Sam Leavitt has got to find more guys to throw to. Second leading receiver was Cam Scattaboo out of the backfield, 605 yards. Yeah, he's not here anymore. Xavier Guillory was your second leading receiver, 329 yards. And he did not really come on until Tyson was injured towards the end of the year. Otherwise, he was used a handful of times each game, 2, maybe 3 receptions. That's not going to work. Shimon Mateer, he got him involved quite a bit. 32 receptions, 306 yards, 5 touchdowns. Certainly liked the tight end this year, and we got to get to know those tight ends. And that's the perfect place to go ahead and start when it comes to making new friends. The tight ends, in my opinion, are going to be one of the most crucial facets of the passing game next year. Because there's a lot of guys here, 4 guys that could end up having very big roles for the team. Starting with Mateer, I think he has a very, very realistic chance to lead this team in touchdown receptions. He had 5 last year. He dropped about the easiest catch I've ever seen in my life against BYU. That would have been probably about a 2-yard touchdown. Would have given him 6, would have been second on the team instead of tied for second on the team with Guillory. I don't see any reason he can't have another 6 touchdowns this year, or 5 touchdowns, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to say 6 touchdowns. It should have been 6. I don't see why he can't do that again, and I don't see why he can't build on that moving forward. There was some inconsistency with Mateer. There was some drop issues, but as long as he improves on that, Sam Leavitt is going to put some trust in him. But there are 3 new faces to the tight end position. First and foremost is the transfer from Kentucky, Kamari Anderson. Is a big dude, 6'5", 240 some odd pounds. there is also some big body red zone ability with him, but he's also a relative unknown. In his 2 years with the Wildcats, he really didn't do that much. So we don't know what to expect from him. Is he Mark Heston Douglas? Or can he be a tight end too and a complement to Shimon Mateer? Could he jump Shimon Mateer? I don't know. Very interesting. And then you've got the redshirt freshman, Jaden Fortier, and the true freshman, AJ Ia, who are coming in to this recruiting class. Essentially, Jaden Fortier, brand new. He's green. He was recovering from an ACL surgery a year ago, missed the entirety of the year. So redshirt freshman who literally did not see the field, might as well be a freshman, and AJ Ia, obviously a freshman. But 2 4-star tight ends, 2 guys that have very, very good receiving prowess. Fortier is someone who very much intrigues me. I have been on him since he committed about a year and a half ago to ASU as someone that not only do I think could be a good tight end, but I think he could just be a really good pass catcher, someone that shooting in the dark here, because again, we have not seen him 700 yards. I don't know. I think there's the potential for 48 to be like second on the team in receiving yards, because I think he just looks like the best pure receiver on the team, or at least he looked that way coming out of high school. We have no idea. Ia, big, strong dude, super athletic. I would not be surprised if he was another guy who really came on during the year and potentially a red zone guy. What I will say about the tight end position, I do not foresee, pending injury, I do not foresee 48 missing games this year, and I do not foresee AJ Ia being in a situation where he redshirts. I think you're going to see the tight end a lot this year. And Jason Mons, the tight end coach, has put in a lot of work with these guys. They are all in on what he's throwing out there. Let's talk about the receivers. Malik McClain, one of the few guys who's coming back. Otherwise, there's really not much there. There's a lot of question marks. I know Zachariah Sample is back. We did not see him last year. He's got a lot of hype. He's putting on some weight. He looks good. I am excited to see him in spring ball in about a month and a half or so. It's coming up quick. But Malik McClain, one of the lone returners, had 2 receptions last year, each of them for over 40 yards, one of them for a touchdown in the Peach Bowl against Texas, a touchdown pass from Cam Scadaboo, by the way. This is big play potential. He didn't really see the field to start the year, ended up redshirting, but was able to play the last 2 games of the season because it was the postseason after the first 12 games. So those games do not count against your redshirt. Make of that what you will. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. But he was able to come out and he showed off some big playability. Only 2 receptions, but again, he feels like a downfield threat. Is he your top downfield threat? That'll be really interesting to see because he's a big dude, 6'4", 6'5", and he's not slow. He's not like a 4.3 guy, but he can move. And that size, you put the ball up, he's going to get it. If you don't know this about me, I'll just throw this out there real quick. When it comes to wide receiver builds, like everyone's got their own preference. The bigger, the better for me. Like those 6'5" receivers, that's my sweet spot. Anything above 6'3", those are my favorite types of receivers because I love jump balls and I love some guys that I know will just be able to get the ball. Some guys prefer those smaller receivers who can just get high volume and make guys miss in the open field. My preference is the big guys, which is why I'm so interested in Malik McClain going into next year. Introducing the transfer class. Noble Johnson, coming from Clemson, former 4-star, complete unknown. I have no idea what to make of him. He did not see the field hardly at all with Clemson. We're gonna find out who he is. And obviously coming out of high school as a 4-star, there's potential there for him to be wide receiver too, but we have no idea what to expect. The guy who I do know and have a good idea of is Jalen Moss, transferring in from Fresno State, a very, very productive player in his 2 years with the Bulldogs, over 100 catches, a handful of touchdowns, right around 1,000 yards between those 2 seasons. I think this should be, I'll say the favorite. I would say he's probably the favorite to open the season as wide receiver 2 as of January 30th. He's definitely the most proven of the 4 guys who transferred to Arizona State over the offseason. By far the most proven. He's got more numbers than the other 3 guys combined. Well, not true about the last guy. We'll get to him. Next up, Jaren Hamilton, another former 4-star recruit from Alabama. He's the speedy dude. He might be your stretch the field guy. I don't know about the go-to deep threat, which we'll get to him in just a second. But Jaren Hamilton should have a role as someone who can stretch the field out. Like, I see him as like Xavier Guillory, where it's like you don't see him as like not the hot route, but like just the go route. Like, just go as fast as you can down the field. Let's see if I can get you that ball. Doesn't feel like that guy for me, but it does feel like someone that I'm going to hit in the deep intermediate to deeper down the field. Like, I would not be surprised if he was someone I'm targeting 15 to 20 yards down the field on a pretty consistent basis. The guy who I do think is going to be the go-to deep ball guy is Linke Rhodes, transferring in as a junior college player, so he will have 3 years of eligibility thanks to the new ruling from the offseason. He might be the fastest receiver on this team. And if Sam Leavitt improves on that deep ball, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, he might be a real threat. Here's what I want to round out this first conversation. There was only 3 receivers last year, wide receivers, not tight end, not Cam Scatterbo, that Leavitt connected with for 10 or more times. That has got to change this year. Now, I'm good with the JT Jordyn Tyson connection. He's definitely your most trusted guy. You guys are best friends, highest upside. Keep that thing going. He can have 100 catches. I'm totally fine with that. But you do need to find a reliable number 2 receiver that you can get the ball to more consistently. And Xavier Guillory was that guy, but he didn't get used as much. And I think you need to make up for that this upcoming year. Find a downfield threat, find a red zone threat, and you should be nice and even out going into next year. Now, coming up next on the show is talking about some efficiency. Sam Leavitt was pretty efficient last year across the board, but of course, there's always room for improvement. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk to you about our friends over at Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with fans is unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my Arizona State Sun Devils clinch the playoff, and I got to go and see it live. Obviously, they didn't win, but it's still a memory that I won't forget. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks, which is going to filter out the fluff and show you the best deals on great seats, and you can focus on what matters most, being there. I used Game Time Picks very recently to take a look at comedy events. That's right. It's not just games. It's comedy. It's theater. It's all sorts of good stuff. I took a look. I couldn't have had a better job. I found a super deal. It was, same seats as anyone else, but I got news for you. There's great seats that are always available, and you can preview your seats before you buy them. There's also the all-in pricing, which obviously is a game changer. There's no surprise fees at checkout. So when I messaged my buddy and I said, hey, this is the final total, it was the final total. It was not a guesstimate or anything like that. I know exactly what I'm paying for my upcoming event. And knowing my tickets are backed with the Game Time guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Because with the Game Time guarantee, if you find tickets in the same section or row for less than what they have, they're going to give you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You guys are the best, as always, for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Efficiency for Sam Leavitt was not an issue last year, but there's always room for improvement. The one thing that I definitely believe needs to have borderline significant improvement is the completion percentage. Sam Leavitt ended the year 61.7%, more than respectable, especially when you consider the first half of the year, he was struggling to be in that low 60% range. Let's go from the first 6 games of the year before he missed the Cincinnati game due to injury. Opening game against Wyoming, 63.6%. I take that every day of the week and twice on Saturdays. Mississippi, 50%. 10 of 20. I know it's not a lot of volume, but that's got to be better. Texas State, 63.3%. Yep, I'll take that. Sounds good to me. Texas Tech dropped down to 57.9. Got to be better. Got to be better, but it's good competition compared to the 3 you played. Kansas, 58.3%. Yeah, he threw 4 touchdowns in that game, which was a career high and a season high for him, but you've got to be able to get above 60, especially against a team like Kansas, who at the time was not all that great. I know they were starting to rebound, but that's got to be better. And then Utah, who was ranked 16th at the time, 61.1%. That's not bad. It definitely could be better. He also had 4 interceptions in that span, 4 straight games from Texas State to Utah with an interception. He misses the Cincinnati game due to injury. Here's what happens when he comes back. 69% against Oklahoma State. Terrific. Against UCF, 64%. That's pretty great too. Kansas State, 61.8%. Again, not bad. Could be better. BYU, 64%. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. Against U of A, 77.3%. That's outstanding. No one is asking you to do that on a regular basis, but if you can get a handful of those in the season, we love it. Iowa State, 70.6%. Again, love that to pieces. If you can get me a handful of those throughout the season, I'll take it every single time. And then against Texas, we dipped down to 52.2%. The fairness to him is he hadn't seen a defense like that all year long, but that also contributed to one of the reasons why ASU did not win the game is Sam Leavitt was struggling with the consistency of getting the ball out. So that's got to be better. 4 games of under 60%, 2 games above 70%. I don't need the whole season to go over 70%, but I do need to see an improvement from 61.7. If I can get that about 3% better, get me closer to 65%, that's a huge, huge drastic increase. I understand that, but that's where you need him to go to be able to take that next step. Let's talk about turnover percentage. Pretty darn good. 1.7% of his passes were interceptions. 350 attempts on the dot, 6 interceptions. Keep in mind, 4 of those interceptions came in the first month and a half of the season. After the injury, he only threw 2 interceptions, one against BYU, one against Texas, the 2 best teams that he played at that point in time. Otherwise, he was tossing a lot of touchdowns, What was that? 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, that's what I thought. 16 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions over the last 2, 4, 6, 7 games. He did not throw a touchdown against Texas. I love that. What I want to make sure we're doing is there's going to be more attempts this year. There's going to be more attempts. I would assume it is going to be a minimum of 400, and I want him as himself to aim for about 400. I need that percentage at a minimum to not drastically change in a bad way. I need that percentage to stay at 1.7 or lower. Now, ideally, if you were able to get that, you're going to be in a great spot. If you get to 6 interceptions again, but on 400 attempts, that's going to drop to roughly 1.5%. Pretty darn good. He's taking care of the ball. He did not record a fumble in 2024, at least according to StatMuse. And I had to check a few places, couldn't find one there. He has 1 in his career at Michigan State. Fumbles do not appear to be an injury. The pocket presence, this was something that I criticized Sam Leavitt on very early on in the season. It felt like Sam Leavitt didn't 100% trust his offensive line. And there were times where it looked like he was ready to bail on the pocket the moment he felt any kind of pressure. Like it wasn't like a let's step into the pocket, let's maneuver the pocket. It was like, okay, play's broken down, I got to go. And they definitely improved that over the second half of the year. I just need to make sure that the continuity is going to continue to be there. I need the continuity that you showed at the end of the year to be willing to stick around continues to be that way. And I think the same continuity that you have on the offensive line with 4 or 5 starters returning, including both of your starting tackles, I expect them to be a better and more consistent unit as well, which hopefully will allow Sam Leavitt to get more and more comfortable and not be forced into running the ball. And when you do run the ball, just be smart about it. He doesn't slide. Hopefully they're working on that. He did get better at getting down, but you've got to minimize those chances for a defensive player to hit you and potentially injure you, like what happened against Utah. Now, I do not blame Leavitt on the Utah hit. He was carrying the ball. He couldn't get down. He was kind of fighting for yards, and then a Utah defender came in from the side and cracked him. Totally legal play. It wasn't a dirty play. It's just that was not necessarily avoidable. You're just kind of stuck in the situation. Just make sure that you're doing better there, and don't be afraid to hang in the pocket. Know when to run, know when to step up. You don't need to run every single time. Really good numbers. Just make sure that you maintain them. 221.9 passing yards per game. I think that needs to improve. Real quick, the 2024 numbers that I'm about to go through, these are either a baseline or floor, and then I'm going to tell you if they need to improve or not. 29 total touchdowns, 24 passing, 5 rushing. Keep in mind, he missed a game against Cincinnati where he definitely would have scored touchdowns. 2.2 per game. It's definitely going to get better. 8.2 yards per attempt. Whew, that's pretty darn good. Just maintain that. That's good, man. That's a good yards per attempt. Like I mentioned with the percentage, 61.7%, that cannot get worse, and it needs to get better. Like I said, 6 interceptions on 400 attempts when you talk about the turnover percentage goes down to about 1.5. That's ideal. Make sure you continue not to fumble the ball. My question, is it sustainable that he has 1 fumble in his career? And I don't feel like that's right. I feel like I saw him fumble this year. Please let me know if I'm incorrect. Not if I'm incorrect, if StatMuse is incorrect. I feel interested about that. Those are the things that I need to see. Nothing is more important than clutch time. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, you guys are the best for tuning in every single day and making the Locked On Sun Devils podcast for your first listen of the day. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day. Nothing is more important for a quarterback than winning in the clutch time, in the big games, in the ranked games, in the games that decide your future for the season. Are you going to be going to the postseason? Are you going to be going to a lower bowl game? Are you not going bowling at all? Sam Leavitt in big games last year. Not shabby, got to get better. 29 total touchdowns on the season. 9 of them came against ranked opponents. 8 of them were passing. 1 was rushing. 4 of those touchdowns, 4 of 9 touchdowns came against Iowa State. Now, keep in mind that that is the Big 12 championship. If you're gonna have majority of your touchdowns in one game, I'm good with it being a title game. But you were scoreless against Texas, and that just can't happen. Again, I understand you hadn't seen a defense like Texas all year. That's a college football playoff game. One of the biggest games that Sam Leavitt has ever played in the entirety of his life, high school, Pop Warner, whatever. Huge game for him. It's not on him that he struggled, but I also think he played decent, but you can't do that again moving forward. Wins matter. Right, wrong, or indifferent, wins matter, especially at the quarterback spot. So the ultimate goal for ASU is that you need to just perform at the highest level possible when it comes to playing those ranked opponents. ASU played 5 ranked opponents last year. Make of it what you will, because I know some teams like Utah didn't end up being good, but they were ranked at the time. And I stay on that hill. 4-1 against ranked opponents. The only loss, Texas. 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the wins. Scoreless against Texas. Reminding you of that. He played very well against ranked opponents. And he could have played better because a handful of those games, K-State and BYU, ASU took their foot off the gas. And part of that was Sam Leavitt not being as aggressive in the second half. That can't be the case. But I also don't think that will be the case because we saw against U of A, and I understand U of A is not a good football team, but they said, twist the knife. No more playing one half of football and then letting off the gas. They said, twist the knife. They did that against U of A, and then they did that against Iowa State. They crushed Iowa State. And Sam Leavitt dominated that game. Big plays down the field, conversions on fourth down. He was more than smart enough as a runner. He was making great throws, intermediate, short, deep, whatever. Just make sure that you can consistently do that in the big games. You prove that you can do that in the big games. That, to me, that's huge, man. I mean, we'll take a look at the three things that we just talked about. Making new friends in the passing game. That's going to be pivotal because Jordyn Tyson can't do it by himself. There are guys that are there, guys that you know. We know who Shimon Mateer is. You can trust him with the touchdowns. We are familiar with Malik McClain. Obviously, they have a lot of time with practice with each other, whether he was wearing a green shirt or he was actually practicing with the first team. You know of him. You have a connection. Let's continue to build on that. But there's a lot of new faces. There's 2 fresh green tight ends. There's a new transfer tight end. There are 4 transfer receivers. There's youngsters on the team, freshmen, redshirt freshmen. You've got to find connections with these guys, first and foremost, which is going to lead to more efficiency. That was second on our list, making sure that you are going to be completing your passes at a higher percentage, continuing to limit the turnovers, hopefully making them a little bit less. Trust your offensive line to give you that protection. Throw strikes down the field. Know when to hold them. Know when to fold them. Stay in the pocket. Take off when you have to. That efficiency goes up. He just starts playing better in bigger games. And he did play well in bigger games. Against Utah, number 16, 11 of 18, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. I would argue that was his worst game in ranked opponents. Even against Texas, which the numbers were very much worse. He was scoreless and he had a turnover. I would tell you if you watch that game, he played better against Texas than he did against Utah. Maybe a hot take there. But you just got to continue to improve and win those big games. Now, I do want to end the show with just a little bit of a treat, but we are going to rapid fire this. I have talked about this previously, and that's Sam Leavitt being a Heisman Trophy candidate. He has odds. I want to say he's top 20 in odds, according to our friends at FanDuel. If he's going to win the Heisman, it's going to take everything that we just talked about to improve upon. It's going to take a little bit more than that. It starts with wins. And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, you got to win at least 10 games, stay as close to perfect as possible. You need to be as many ranked opponents. You also can't get blown out in any game. I don't care if you play number 1. You cannot get blown out. You got to beat your ranked opponents. You have to win the Big 12 more than likely, or at least make it to the college football playoff. It's very rare that players will win the Heisman that did not go to the playoff. Ideally, most of your ranked opponents are probably going to be in the Big 12 anyways, but whoever they are, if it's BYU in the championship game or Baylor, Iowa State, whoever, you just need to make sure that you beat them. Statistically, the more single-season records you can break with ASU, the better. 4,000 plus passing yards, 500 plus rushing yards, 45 touchdowns. That sounds like a lot. Well, the lowest amount of touchdowns of Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks since Cam Newton in 2010 was 44 with Jameis Winston. But guess what? He was undefeated and went on to win a national championship game. Like I said, as many program records as possible. But Heisman Trophy, honestly, kind of irrelevant. But it was something I wanted to touch on, if for no other reason than this is the ceiling. like the absolute best case scenario that I could see from Sam Leavitt would be these kind of numbers: 4,000 yards, 45 total touchdowns, as many ranked wins as possible, win the Big 12, go to the college football playoff, hopefully win a game. That is like shoot for the moon. But the bottom line, the baseline that I need Sam Leavitt to establish more connections with more receivers. I need the efficiency to get better, certainly with the completion percentage. I need him to continue playing at a safe rate and not turning the ball over. I need you to continue to get more comfortable in the pocket, run when you have to, not when you feel like you need to. Let's get better against competition that is ranked, and we'll be golden. We'll be looking good at that point in time. That's where I think Sam Leavitt needs the improvement in 2025. And I think if he gets that improvement, you talk about him as an elite quarterback, and he's already going to go into this year as one of the most well-known quarterbacks in the country, as long as you pay attention to not just ESPN. But what do you guys think? Where do you want to see Sam Leavitt improve the most? And a bonus question, who do you think wide receiver 2 is going to be this year? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw 36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get the update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. And of course, a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks as always to you guys, the best fans in the world, for the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Still lots to come this weekend for our live show. Will be Saturday evening following the ASU versus U of A basketball game. It's a huge game for ASU. They've got to find some way to win the game. You need to make a statement. U of A is hot right now. You got to find a way. But we will be going live later in the evening to talk about that game. So make sure that your notifications are on and you're subscribed for the YouTube channel specifically. That's where we'll be going live. I'll see you guys there, hopefully to talk about a win over U of A. Until then, and until tomorrow, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.